Good morning. Welcome to Good News Covington County with Brother John. Got the usual crew in here this morning. Got Cousin Tom, Cousin Jared, trying to make news happen here for you in Covington County. Welcome on board, whether you're in Red Level or Opp, Sanford or Pleasant Home, Andalusia or Strawn. We're glad to have all of you here with us today and hope you'll enjoy this broadcast. Lots of news to share with you today. Some of it good, some of it different. We'll let you make the decision about which is which. We try to keep it as positive as we can. I guess the biggest news in the paper today, the Andalusia Star News, was an article written by Michelle Gerlach about a company called Ulista, spelled that Y-U-L-I-S-T-A. Ulista is an aircraft maintenance company that's very interested in leasing the hangars out at the South Alabama Regional Airport here in between Andalusia and Opp. Now, if you've been following the news, you know that we've lost one of our big contractors out there recently, and they'll be closing their doors, and it'll mean about the loss of about 100 good jobs here in Covington County. The Ulista company does some very similar work, and they'll be opening it hopefully in the next few weeks, end of July anyway, and employing 17 to 22 people. It's not 100, but it's a blow. I was always told we should be thankful for what we've got and hope for the best. Lockheed Martin officials have already visited the place, and that's who Ulista is contracted to, about the work that they do there as a subcontractor to Lockheed Martin. Ulista paid $30,000 for the lease option to hold it until July. The airport manager, Jed Blackwell, said if Ulista executes this option on the option to lease, it will pay $30,000 per month for the facility. It does not give a time of how long the duration for the contract will be. But this has been a tough thing. There's another article that we'll cover in a little bit later today about a company in Opp. These defense contractors, and there are a lot of them in this area, have had a tough road to hoe the last few years. I don't know, I want to say it was 6 years ago when sequestration went in and budgets were cut radically. A lot of the funding for many things was cut to the bone. We're kind of paying for it from what I can see in many places, but aircraft maintenance is one of the things that's been cut. Contracts have been rewritten, relet as time goes on, and it's a very competitive area, obviously. We're glad to see these people coming now. Who is Ulista? They're a subsidiary of a company called Callista. And it's an Alaska Native regional corporation created under the Alaska Native Claim Settlement Act of 1973. That doesn't mean much to us, except it's a company owned by about 17,000 Native American Inuit and Native American Alaskans that has gotten into the defense industry, and they work most of the contracts either for the defense industry or Homeland Security. The company is headquartered in Huntsville, not too far away, and they're very serious about what they do. And according to their spokespeople, they're very serious about coming here to Covington County. We welcome their interest, and we'll welcome them to the community when they get here. Just as a short note, excuse me, this pollen's a wonderful thing down here, isn't it? They had a picnic on the square yesterday. The Andalusia Luncheon Pilot Club had their spring annual square picnic fundraiser. That's where they sell you a sack lunch for about $7, and they'd even deliver it to you if you gave them enough advance notice. It was a success. There were a lot of people on the square from what all I can gather. I hope they had a great time, not only pulling this event off, but raising a lot of money for the community. We've got another story that's very relative to that about Andalusia Apparel and OP, and it's the OP Business of the Year. And we'd like to talk to you about that. The OP Chamber of Commerce sponsors, they have their annual banquet just like the Andalusia Chamber of Commerce does. And in the course of the time leading up to the banquet, they have several press releases about the people they will be awarding things to. They had the Trail Master of the Year award that will be given away at the Chamber of Commerce meeting next week. Yesterday they announced that Mike Dubose, the great football player and OP native, would be their Citizen of the Year. And today, in this edition of the Andalusia Star News, in a press release from the OP Chamber of Commerce, they announced who their Business of the Year will be. And when we get back from this break, I'm going to tell you who it is and tell you more about it. Welcome back to Good News Covington County with Brother John and the usual crew of miscreants and good guys. Glad to have you here with us today. It's 20th day of April. Boy, howdy, this month has flown by. Glad to have you on board today. Now, when we left, I was telling you about the big doings that the OP Chamber of Commerce is having preparatory to their annual meeting. And when I left, I'd identified some of the things that had been in the Andalusia paper regarding who they're honoring. Well, today's Andalusia Star News had an article about the OP Business of the Year. Great story about a great little company. It's not a little company, but a great company. A lot of local roots. American Apparel in OP, Alabama has been picked as the Business of the Year. The OP Chamber of Commerce will recognize American Apparel as its Business of the Year at its annual banquet in May. American Apparel is a privately held company that was founded in 1967. Excuse me, I think that's 87. I'm going to check my read. 87. It's become known as one of the premier producers of clothing for the military. American Apparel operates facilities in Selma, Center, Alabama, and OP, employing around 750 people. The company opened in OP in 2002, manufacturing Marine Corps utility uniform trousers. For the next 11 years, of course, they continued to do that. When the Defense Department spending was reduced and the troops returned from the war in Iraq, the requirements for the uniforms had declined tremendously, and that forced the closure of American Apparel and OP in 2013. There was a lot of turmoil in the community, but apparently because of that, you lose jobs, that hurts the community. But the people at American Apparel never forgot the people of OP. As things got better, they ginned things back up and found a way through the innovation of, again, the Marine trouser to open the contract, or to open the store after the factory after the contract they got in 2014, and they've continued to operate since then. Peggy Henderson's the manager there, and she's hung on through thick and thin, and I think that's a great tribute. They restarted in 2014 with 67 employees, and now they have about 250 employees over there. In 2015, the American Apparel was awarded the Golden Star Superior Supplier Award from the Defense Logistics Agency located in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and the Silver Star Award in 2016. In November 2017, American Apparel was awarded a 5-year contract for the Marine Corps utility uniform. Receiving the contract was a big deal, and it was a big step to maintaining the workforce in OP. The plant is currently producing the Navy work uniform trouser, and the improved fire-resistant coverall that the Navy and the Marine Corps are using, mostly around aviation. Chuck Lambert, who's the Chief Operating Officer of American Apparel, stated, "The employees of our plant and op exemplify the attitude and effort that it takes to successfully, to be successful not only in business but in life as well." The 2018 Hall of Fame and membership banquet is set for 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, May 10th at the Op Depot. By the way, y'all just go by the Op Depot to take a look at that place. They've really done a great job on that. Now, earlier this week, we reported to you that the Board of Education was considering some things to do at Andalusia High School as they refurbish the auditorium and the stadium down there. Things have moved along. They've made a lot of decisions about that. One of the big things that we talked about earlier in this week was removal of a canopy outside the auditorium, which used to provide shelter when accessing the band room. That's gone. It would have cost about $23,000 to replace it. They replaced the tile in the bathroom at the Andalusia High School auditorium, and that was not in the original bid. The tile was damaged when the renovations began, so that's an added $7,300 to the expenses they didn't anticipate. Replacing the concrete behind the home bleachers is another $35,000. That was an anticipated expense. Painting the metal top on the canopy in what is the plaza area of the stadium. The original contract just calls for it to be pressure washed. Replacing for the canopy would have cost $109,000, but the board opted only to have the pressure wash and have the canopy painted, and that's between $5,000 and $8,000. One of the things I was glad to see, and there was a little controversy, was that they've decided to upgrade the decorative metallic fencing for the entire stadium. The original drawings and specs call for this, but as they went through the process and tried to look at ways they could possibly economize on that, the 300 feet of fencing was also quoted as chain link. Quite honestly, it probably would have done a fine job, but not nearly as aesthetically pleasing and a lot harder to keep clean and keep debris out of. That was approved. The upgrade is going to be about $105,000. The measure was approved on a 3-2 vote after some controversy and some other things. It was approved, though. And when we get back, I'll talk to you about more of the events that happened at the Board of Education meeting. Welcome back to Good News Covington County. The optical assisted version today is I finally proved that my eyes are getting to be too old just to read things off of our prompter here. I'm going to have to ask for my cheaters today to help a little bit. We're trying to get the light adjusted here in the studio, and as we do with that, the different lighting things affect us in different ways. We were talking about the improvements and changes they're making in the $12.2 million upgrade of the facilities at Andalusia High School's auditorium and stadium, and we had talked about some of the other things that they were doing. Now, this is just like anything else. There are unanticipated costs that go along with construction. My dad used to build houses, and he had what he called the hickey factor that he built into every bid. And I asked, "Dad, what's the hickey factor?" He says, "Well, that means there's some hickey out there that's going to be a hiccup. It's going to cost you money that you didn't anticipate. It's never as smooth as you think it will be when you bid one." That's what's happened here. As they move things around over at the stadium, that is not level ground. There's a lot of ground fall from the front of that facility where Andalusia High School is to the back of the facility where the stadium and the women's softball field is. And as they've tried to clean out and move this stuff around and make improvements, apparently they've created a little bit of a drainage problem that they didn't anticipate. They're going to have to add some additional drainage handling capacity to that land in order to keep it from becoming just a wreck, a morass. That's a great word. Nobody ever uses it to describe something that's not pleasant to deal with geographically. Last weekend, the combination of heavy rains and change in the drainage patterns caused by the work being done at the auditorium caused a retaining wall to collapse on the softball field, and the estimated cost to repair that's about $10,000. That made them have to consider, I'm sure they didn't want to consider this, making some modifications to the entire drainage plan so that they could go forward without having to look back over their shoulders the next time they had a heavy rain. Adding drainage at the far end of the stadium near the football facility, the board was asked to consider adding that drainage and doing additional landscaping there at a cost of $50,000. They voted only to do the drainage part, and they voted to ask the city to help with the landscaping as an in-kind donation. In other words, the city will use its personnel to do the work, and they've got the manpower, and they've got qualified people, and they've got the equipment to do that work in lieu of hiring a contractor, and that's probably a pretty good thing. Also, the board discussed but made no decision regarding the scoreboard. As I mentioned earlier in the week, they've already got part of the scoreboard. Coca-Cola Company's more than willing to put up an analog part of the scoreboard, maybe a better one than they had before, but it won't be digital. But the city of Andalusia wants to have instant replay and for touchdowns and those kind of things, with an eye toward having improvement there that they could have replays during the ball games in the future. To do that, they're going to want a video screen that they can put up with the scoreboard, and that's going to cost about $100,000. And of course, that's a lot of money, and they're looking around for ways to fund that without hurting their budget. And they're just trying to get us the most bang for the buck. Be a wonderful thing to have in there. I think the nearest stadium that has that capability to us right now is the one in Enterprise. They've already received an exemption from the Alabama State High School Athletic Association to put the scoreboard up and to begin experimenting with the rules regarding instant replay on controversial plays. They'll be allowed, I think, 2 recalls per game, 1 in each half. Coach would be allowed to hold a red flag they can throw up if there's something that they question, and if the question is accepted, they can replay it. The 2 judges that weren't closest to the play will be the ones that make the decision based on the video. So apparently this process has already moved down the line quite a bit. You might just say it's probably the next big thing that's going to be happening in high school football. Andalusia's done a wonderful job, I think, of promoting itself through school athletics, and we've got a wonderful facility over there. I don't think there are any more than 2 in the state that parallel it or are any better. And Trent Taylor and his staff over there, under the leadership of Dr. Ted Watson, have done a tremendous job marketing the Andalusia athletic programs to not only the community but to the rest of the state. And it's been obvious, of course, that they've been very successful with that, because Andalusia, people all over the state know about our athletics now. They've got a brand, and they talk about it, and that extends Andalusia's reach, not just yours, not just the high school, but the whole city of Andalusia's reach extends to the state as a result of the marketing that Trent Taylor and his people do. And I happen to know for a fact that much of this effort is due to Trent Taylor and his, I think, kind of genius for inventing himself and inventing his team. We wish him the best over there, and we hope it'll be a great improvement for everybody in Andalusia. Now we're going to stop for a minute and be back with a few more words. Welcome back to Good News Covington County. I'm Brother John. We're glad to have you here with us. Our next segment, we're going to start out talking about the Rumors in Andalusia, Alabama. Rumors is a Fleetwood Mac tribute band that's played all over the United States. They're based in Atlanta. They even look like Fleetwood Mac. They do an awful lot of the selections that Fleetwood Mac did over their years, including off of the Rumors album, which is, I guess, maybe their best seller. The Covington County Arts Council tried bringing in a tribute band last year, and the response was overwhelming. I thought, as they went through their planning for this year, they decided to bring in another tribute band. And this year, it's a Fleetwood Mac tribute band. I believe last year it was an Eagles tribute band. They had a great quality audience that came to that, and that's what they're anticipating this year. Excuse me, last year it was Journey, not the Eagles. It was Journey that the tribute band did. If you like Fleetwood Mac, this will be a good opportunity to kind of recreate that experience and go and hear the music the way that you probably remember it from the vinyl or from the old tape player, maybe even if you had an early CD player. You can enjoy that experience. And there are a lot of people, very few people I know my age and 20 years either way, well, maybe 20 years earlier than me, that don't have some Fleetwood Mac somewhere around. I was telling the guys that I've got an old vinyl album called Buckingham Nicks that was made by Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, just the two of them before they added Bob Welch and Christy McVie and all these other people that I picked up back in the old days when they were playing a club in the Birmingham area. You know, a lot of people don't realize how many good musicians have come through this area and how many good musicians have come out of this area. You know, we always think of people, the musicians from a lot of other places, but Buddy Bowie in the Atlanta rhythm section came from over in Opp and Eufaula in that area, not Opp, Dothan and Eufaula in that area. And in fact, there's about to be a new book released about the Atlanta rhythm section. You know, Classics 4, that was their predecessor. All those guys played in clubs and venues here in this area. I've heard them. Bobby Goldsboro and the Webbs. The Webbs were Goldsboro's backup band for a number of years. Some of them went on to become Atlanta rhythm section. Many of them went on and backed up a guy you may have heard of before called Roy Orbison. So we've got some strong connections. Pensacola's produced some strong music connections. I guess one of the best that I remember was a group called the Blues Magoos. And the reason I remember them is that we had them booked for our senior, as juniors, we had them booked for our junior-senior prom. And they had to cancel on us because they had been booked to perform on a show at that time called the Bell Telephone Hour, which was kind of a documentary about things that were going on. And they had been called out of Pensacola, Florida, as a representative for the Bell Telephone Hour, which had a viewership of millions, to come on and play. And guess what they were an example of? The new trend in psychedelia in music. One of the original psychedelic groups came from this part of the world. We had booked them for our junior-senior prom as juniors. A guy named Philip Rawls that eventually ended up writing for the Associated Press. Was a state editor and everything. Philip Rawls was sharper than a brand new pocket knife. He could see trends coming down the road, and he booked these guys. Well, they called and they said, well, we got to cancel. We can't come to Andalusia because we've got this date. Well, I understand that. That's a big deal, you know. We could have held them to the foot of the fire, but said, look, we'll provide you with a band, a good band, if you'll let us go to this date and not, you know. And so they got us a group out of Pensacola called the Phaetons. Spell that Phaeton. It's a Greek name. But anyway, Phaeton was a Greek character in mythology. They were a great band. They came to town. I remember they had a guy that was their lead guitar player, had glasses, had the old Coca-Cola bottom type glasses, but he could play a guitar magnificently. And his name was Ford Carr, C-A-R-R. And he was so blind that when he did the adjusting, now this is all analog equipment, he would get like this to adjust the volume on his amplifier. But he could play a guitar. And they got up there and they did their little warm-up. Everybody's out there in their prom dresses, anticipating what's about to happen. And the first song they played was a Rolling Stones song called Let's Spend the Night Together. And I thought the principal of Andalusia High School was going to have a cow right there in the auditorium as the Phaetons went in. Let's spend the night together. I love you more than ever. Anyway, it was I guess you had to be there to see it, but it was sure a lot of fun. We're going to break here and be back in a minute with more news. Welcome back to Good News Covington County. Glad to have you back. Before I told you the old war story about my life and my junior-senior prom, we were talking about the tribute group Rumors that's going to be coming to Andalusia in early May of this year. Need to tell you where you can get the tickets for Rumors. You can get them at Harold's Furniture, the Andalusia Star News. They're $15 in advance and $20 at the door. The concert will be held at the Dixon Center for the Performing Arts at the LBW campus, here in town. And speaking of music, you never know where you're going to hear music come from. There's this kid from in this area named Storm Baumgartner. I think I remember this young man waiting on me at Walmart. Used to work up at the checkout, but that could be my memory. Anyway, he was on social media. He's been fooling around with music and that kind of stuff on social media. And show you how the world works. Somebody heard some of what he was doing and contacted him, wanting to hear more of his music. He thought it was just some guy that wanted to, as he said, steal a beat that I had produced. And the next thing you know, this young man is showing his music to the guy that had contacted him, boss. And he went on to sign a deal with a company called Lyrical Innovations in mid-March. Lyrical Innovations is a record label out of Houston, Texas. And anyway, that's a big deal. He was 14 Baumgartner was 14 when he started making music. He was working at Walmart as a day job and going to LBW. And he loved what he was doing. He loved the job at Walmart, loved the people. Very positive seeming young man. But anyway, he's been picked up, and the group that picked him up has carried him out to L.A. To help debut some music from some other groups out there. And I just love the story about how they got there. To save money, they drove from here to L.A., he and a couple of his buddies, to save money so that they could have more fun in L.A. Storm graduated from Opp High School in 2015 and went to LBW before signing with Lyrical Innovations. He now works from his home on his laptop there, making music. His ultimate goal is to move to California, which is kind of the epicenter of the entertainment world, and I wish him the best on that. And it's kind of odd that you think this is odd that a kid from a place like Opp can get heard. How many of you people out there, and I know you're not going to raise your hand because I can't see, have ever heard of the group Boston? Pretty good sized group, and they are from the Boston area. And they were the first people, and this is not Brother John's memory, this is something that's been certified by those officials at MTV. They were the first people to engineer a record engineer a record of recordings on what amounts to be a basement studio, and where they laid the tracks upon tracks upon tracks. Something that was originally invented by a guy named Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly and the Crickets was the first person to lay tracks on tracks, but he did it in a studio. These guys figured out a way to downsize it and do it in a basement in Boston. And their first album, when it was released under those kind of, was produced like that, where there were only 5 musicians that were involved, but they had laid on so many tracks, and the music, like More Than a Feeling, is still classic music out there, and it was produced just like this young man, Storm Baumgartner, did as a homegrown product. Now on to a little bit of sports news. Yesterday, the Pleasant Home Eagles played Kinston in a doubleheader to go to in the first round of the Class 1A playoffs. They played down at Pleasant Home, and it was a tough game. First game, Kinston won 4-1. Josh Ruth started for the Eagles, and they had a hard time getting their hitting going. Judd Fuquay down there played some great defense and threw out a runner attempting to steal second. Shane Nixon drove in the only home run that the Eagles scored in that game. And it ended, as I said, with the Eagles losing 4-1. They had to turn around, and this is always a tough thing, especially for young people, and play a second game. Pleasant Home lost that one by a score of 3-2. The unfortunate thing about that, not only did they lose, they lost after being ahead most of the ball game. The Eagles went 2-0 in the top of the third after James Hawkins was hit by an errant pitch, and they held on until the very end of the game, and they were defeated by a score of 2-1 by Kinston. Wish them the best. In other news, the LBW Saints at LBW Community College went over to Enterprise on the road and beat the Enterprise 9, led by Jackson Henderson, Cole Powell, and Casey Henderson. It was a good ball game, and I'm glad they won. Matthew Christian gave the Saints their lead when he drove in Mr. Powell and C.J. Henderson with a single. Great to see them do so well. Looks like it's time to take another break. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the final segment of today's Good News Covington County, coming to you from live on the square at WKNI's scenic studio facility, located right here in the northern part of Covington County, Alabama. Today in history, got a few things we want to cover. Today is an important day in history. In 1862, the Frenchman Louis Pasteur and Claude Bernard this was the first time that milk was pasteurized. I don't know if people realize this, but people used to get smallpox and other things from milk before they started the pasteurization process, which of course was named after Louis Pasteur. And the first time it was done on this date in 1862. In 1902, Marie and Pierre Curie isolated the radioactive element radium chloride. This led to X-rays and things like that. Originally, it was X-rays were viewed as the next new thing to cure everything. They weren't, unfortunately, and a lot of people didn't handle a very dangerous product as they should have. But it brought about a new era in medicine where they could look inside and see what was going on in many cases without having to do exploratory surgery. What a great advance for mankind. In 1920, the Balfour Declaration was recognized, and that's what made Palestine a British mandate. The Zionists and the Palestinians have been clashing over that era for years, but that really started the dominoes that would lead to the creation of the state of Israel. So it's an important day for that. And in 1974, the Troubles, if you've ever heard the band U2 from Ireland, they sing about the Troubles in many of their songs. It was between the Republicans and the Loyalists in Northern Ireland, a fight between the British and the Republicans there. That's what it amounted to. It became a security issue, it became a civil rights issue, a number of things. But on this day in 1972, the Troubles claimed their 1,000th victim. In 1999, Columbine High School massacre occurred. I don't need to go into too much detail about that. Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris killed 13 of their fellow students and injured another 24 before committing suicide at Columbine High School in Colorado, and we've still been trying to figure out what went on there. And then in 2010, it's hard to believe it was, I think it was 2012, wasn't it? No, it's 2010. The Deepwater Horizon drilling rig exploded, killing 11 people and causing the rig to sink and causing massive discharge in what many people say was probably the worst ecological disaster to occur in the Gulf of Mexico since there's been a Gulf of Mexico. We went and did a buzzard count today. There were 6 buzzards early on, and they've all flown away to dinner somewhere on the ground. Then we've got our weather for the next few days. Today it's going to be sunny, beautiful outside today, with a high near 74, 75. It's very comfortable to go out and work in the yard. East wind 5 to 10 miles an hour, mostly clear, and a low around 51 tonight. I tell you, it was lower than 51 last night. Saturday it'll be sunny with a high near 77. Again, the east wind 5 to 10 miles an hour. Saturday night it'll be about a 40% chance of rain as clouds move into the area. Sunday, showers are likely. The showers will possibly bring us a thunderstorm or two, and the rain chances are about 80% on Sunday. Sunday night, the showers will become less likely, but there's a possibility for a thunderstorm, a few showers during that. The chance of rain Sunday night is 70%. Well, folks, we're headed into the weekend. I hope it's a great one for you. Heck, I hope I have a great one. Hope these guys I work with too. We want to thank you for hanging with us one more week. We'll be back next week, and hope that you'll be back with us. Now, we'll see you then. Take care.